The Z-Stacks, for their type, are the most devious tugs afloat. And Zorran is the ringleader among these malefactors that racketeer the big city port. This is Zorran. Okay, so this was the video that I originally wanted to close out last year's Tugs Month with, but we all know how that went. So I thought I would kick off this month's video with the number one Z-Stack himself, and why I think he is the perfect antagonist for the series. If you enjoy this video and want to see more like it, then don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and ring Toby's bell to stay notified for when I post new content. Now let's get started. Before we discuss Zorran's character, I think that it's important for us to discuss the differences between an antagonist and a villain, because believe it or not, they are not the same thing, and by extension, Zorran is only the former. Antagonists serve as the opposition to a story's protagonist. Usually, they have opposite or even similar goals, but their means of achieving them brings them into conflict with the main character. While some antagonists are in fact evil, and can also be classed as villains, not all villains are antagonists, as an antagonist is not defined by their humanity or lack thereof. To give an example of what I am talking about, I'd like to turn our attention to Thanos from Avengers Infinity War and the Joker from The Dark Knight. Thanos sought to wipe out half of all life in the universe in order to achieve a form of balance. He believed that it would teach those who remained alive a valuable lesson. He was regarded as mad for doing so, even being nicknamed the Mad Titan. But he still had good intentions, however deluded they were. He showed humanity when he mourned the sacrifice of his adoptive daughter Gamora, and he even displayed respect for those who opposed him. He was a very layered character, and despite being a clear-cut antagonist, he wasn't outright evil, and simply had severely misguided intentions, whereas the Joker had no such humanity. He sought chaos and violence purely for shits and giggles. He served as a perfect foil to Batman, and the only reason he didn't attempt to kill him was because he considered the Dark Knight too much fun. He had no sense of morality, and did what he did just because he could. As Alfred would say to Bruce Wayne,
"Some men just want to watch the world burn."
That's not to say that villains aren't capable of feeling emotions, as the term tragic villain often befalls a character who was once good but turned bad due to unfortunate circumstances. By and large though, it's usually pretty easy to tell a villain apart from an antagonist. Now some of you may be saying, "Cinder, Zorran is nothing like Thanos or the Joker." And to that, you're correct. In terms of personality, Zorran has little to nothing in common with either of these two. However, when you examine the traits that make Thanos an antagonist, and those that make Joker a villain, which one does Zorran more closely align with? Well, let's take a look at some of Zorran's major appearances and find out. Okay, so the first episode that I want to take a look at is Sunshine, the show's pilot episode. As the pilot, it serves to establish the world and its characters. All of the Tugs get speaking roles, except for Zebedee, who is interestingly quiet the whole time. Maybe that was intentional? Who knows? Anyway, this episode serves as a great introduction for Zorran's character. From his very first scene in the first half, we get to see that Zorran is a loyal opportunist and a cunning schemer. He regularly keeps Captain Zero informed with updates on the star's progress with the Duchess, and concocts a plan to cripple their fleet in order to give them a chance at securing the contract. The latter half further highlights his scheming side and also establishes his cunning, as he makes himself appear to aid the Stars when their new recruit Sunshine accidentally crashes into the Duchess. Trapped serves to reinforce the factors of Zorran's character that we already learned in the pilot. While he didn't plan to trap the Stars, he wastes no time in taking advantage of the situation. I also love this line.
Captain Zero will be pleased.
This just goes to show, and again reinforce, Zorran's loyalty to his captain. He doesn't do all of this just because, or out of some deep-seated hatred towards his rivals. Zorran's schemes have a purpose and a clear goal in mind. A goal with the intention of not benefiting only himself, but someone he is loyal to. Munitions is where we get to see the deeper layers of Zorran's character. In this one, both fleets are servicing the Navy, an ordeal made all the more strenuous and difficult thanks to the officious Blue Nose. This is where we get to understand more of how Zorran's mind works. At no point in this story does he attempt to undermine his competition. Zorran is a realist. He knows best how to approach any situation. He understands that scheming in a scenario like this would be foolish. When the night of the loading occurs, we are shown Zorran's level-headedness. When Blue Nose starts trying to order everyone about, Zorran stands with OJ on the importance of safety first.
Move that barge, my load's fast.
You shouldn't move a barge that's being unloaded.
Get pension off, old-timer. This is Maypool, see what goes.
Shut it, the paddler's right. We're not moving that barge, mister.
Later on, when the shit hits the fan and the dark side starts to go boom, Zorran joins OJ in urging 10 Cents to get out of danger.
Don't be a fool, 10 Cents. Get out of there.
He's right, move!
This shows that Zorran has a layer of humanity to him. If he had any true ill will towards the Stars, he wouldn't have spoken up. He simply views them as rivals to undercut and overcome, nothing more. He also does his part in the situation, aiding the Fire Chief in attempting to save Krakatoa. Zorran is a character with a ton of common sense, which makes him the perfect leader for the Zero Fleet. Ghosts is awesome. Everybody knows that. It's awesome for its spooky and eerie atmosphere. It's awesome for its visuals, etc, etc. But something that not many people talk about is the scene with Zorran and Izzy. These two have always had a very comedic relationship. Every time they are on screen together, it is always followed with Zorran being rude to Izzy in some form or another, and that is initially the case here. But after they both get spooked by the ghosts, Zorran willingly agrees to take Izzy into port. I can imagine the conversation once they arrived would have Zorran snapping out of his buddy trance and warning Izzy not to say a word to anyone. And of course, we have Big Freeze, the final episode of the show, and the one where Zorran infamously chastises Zip and Zug for their antics against 10 Cents and Sunshine.
You idiots! We needed that light here, didn't we? To get Vienna in. For us, as well as for them.
While pretty much all of Zorran's plans can be chopped up to corporate espionage, he would never do something as stupid as trapping the Stars with a ready fire barge. He knew that this could not only have lost the Zeds their supply contract with Vienna, but he was also aware of the legal ramifications of what this could mean for Captain Zero, and by extension, the fleet.
Half price though, Zorran?
Yeah, half price, Zorran. Then we don't say anything about Zip and Zug, okay?
What? You crook!
That's good coming from you, Zorran.
A lot of villains just straight up do not care about the law, whereas many antagonists are at the very least weary of legal ramifications and will go out of their way to avoid them in one way or another. Now, after analysing Zorran's major appearances, and once again taking a look at all the traits that define an antagonist from a villain, which of these two categories does Zorran fall into? I say antagonist. Zorran does meaty, shady, villainous things that are not commendable. He's just a slimy opportunist and realist with the clear goal and intention of helping his captain and his fleet prosper. Not by any means necessary, but by the most beneficial means necessary. This is unrelated, But I also want to quickly mention that I love the voice performance for Zorran. Zorran was voiced by Chris Tulloch, who was not an actual voice actor, but was in fact the show's resident art director. He merely did the temp voice for initial filming and editing, but his performance was so good that everyone loved it and they kept it in. And I just think that's amazing. Chris clearly understood the character and beautifully brought him to life with what I consider to be one of the show's best performances. Now on the surface, these episodes of Tad are really just an excuse for me to fanboy over some of my favourite characters in this hidden gem of a kids show, but I figured that you guys should get the opportunity to do the same. So, a few months back, I made a community post asking you all what you thought of Zorran and his role as an antagonist. And so I've selected a few comments that I thought were interesting or insightful, and I'm going to highlight a few of them here. Frostlord1246 says, "Easily one of the most entertaining but also complex villains I've seen. He may be very devious, but he understands that opposing others for the sake of opposing them isn't always the best option. On top of that, he's also hilarious. In every episode he appears in, there's always at least one line from him that makes me crack up." I couldn't agree more. User OC3Q5VO7G says, "I love Zorran. I wish we got an episode through his eyes. He's really not a bad guy, more of an antagonist." Me too. As prominent as Zorran is, it's actually crazy that he never got a full episode centered around him. We can only hope that at least one of those 90+ preserved scripts contains such a story. Gallant Cavalier 3306 said, "If Captain Zero was Al Capone, then Zorran is Frank Nitti." That is actually amazing. Perfectly sums up the mafia-like style of the Zero Fleet. And finally, Crowbar_Reed. Their comment more or less mirrors a lot of what I've already said in the video. But this line in the second half of their thoughts caught my eye especially. It reads, "Zorran is out of place. He's too devious to be a star tug, but too smart and complex to be a Z-stack. He thinks several steps ahead, whereas the schemes of his mates are not. Zack's idea to take the high load up the canal bites him on the stern when he failed to account for the high tide. Zip and Zug didn't consider the legal ramifications of using a fire barge to trap the star switchers, something that Zorran himself chastises them over." This is so true. Zorran doesn't really belong in either fleet. Yeah, it makes more sense for him as a Z-stack than a star tug, but even so, he's too good for his fleet. And a lot of their success boils down to Zorran knowing how to best approach almost any given task. Almost makes me think he should have been a privately owned tug. Zorran is a lot of people's favourite character, or at the very least, their favourite Z-stack. He's a very interesting character with a lot of potential. While he isn't quite my favourite member of the Zero Fleet, he is up there, and definitely deserves a spot on anyone's favourite list. I hope you all enjoyed this year's first instalment of Tugs Month. I've plenty more videos to come, and I'm hoping that I can squeeze something in for Halloween as well, so stay tuned. As always, thank you very much for watching. Now until next time, I've been Cinders and Ashes UK, you've been awesome, and have a great day. Bye!